We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Hey guys, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Was the Red Demon. The Red Demon left with the mist, as fast as light and as silent as a ghost. To most, he is known as the fastest man alive. To others, he was the silent twin. His red stare was able to paralyze any man it gazed on, but his devotion to his family was almost overwhelming. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 5, 5:45 a.m. Naruto and Rin's apartment. Uchiha clan. Kami, big bro, you look terrible. Naruto grumbled, slumping into his seat at the dining table, narrowing a weak side eye to his half-smirking, half-concerned sister. Good morning to you too, Mikoto. The girl shrugged, not knowing Rin was approaching her from behind. I'm just saying, you look worse than normal, ow. Cut it out. Naruto had a long night. The older twin dropped her hand, finished slapping Mikoto upside the head, feeling like the girl had gotten the message. She served her sister a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. Since butter and strawberry jam were more or less permanent fixtures of their dining table, all Mikoto had to do was reach to the center of the table and grab the medium-sized jar of jam, grateful, yet pouting as she spread a layer on her toast with a knife with one hand. We both did. Rin continued. Biting down on jam on toast, Mikoto turned to her sister and observed as she placed Naruto's breakfast before him, giving her brother's shoulder a comforting squeeze as he tiredly smiled up at her. Her long, curly sun-colored hair was pulled back and tied in a loose ponytail, falling to reach her upper back. The usual glow of her skin was somewhat dimmed, not so much as to resemble the paling gray of her brother's but considerable enough for Mikoto to pause. The girl also noticed the grim circles around her normally jovial sister's eyes, less pronounced than the dark bags underneath Naruto's, but, again, it was significantly pronounced for Mikoto to be concerned. The three siblings were ninjas, so waking up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at the crack of dawn was the norm. Mikoto had moved out from the Hokage's residence and had been living with her older siblings in the Uchiha compound since she started going to academy at the age of 8, having been introduced to the benefits of waking up and starting the day productively. By 30 minutes after 6, they were normally all awake, had breakfast and left the house to commence their day. Daily schedules differed, but the common thing was that the twins would take some missions, either solo or as a team, and Mikoto would join her teammates on Training Ground 11 for their morning routine. Now, Naruto and Rin looked abnormally exhausted. Their 3-bedroom apartment seemed too stuffy all of a sudden. The square dining table suddenly seemed too large. Rin took off her apron and sat down across from her brother, sighing into her toast. Mikoto looked between her brother's apologetic look and Rin's returned shrug of nonchalance. It was jarring how awkward it was amongst the twins. Couldn't sleep? Mikoto questioned whoever was willing to answer, speaking with her mouth full and breaking the brittle tension in the air. Yeah. It was Naruto's turn to sigh, exhaling as he sat back on his chair. He pointed to the right side of his stomach. The poison. I need to be awake to keep it out of my vital organs. He gestured to Rin. She helped when I got tired, some time before sunrise. That still didn't mean he could sleep. Getting targeted vibrations into his stomach region wasn't a sensation someone could sleep through. Naruto didn't miss the irony of his situation, since 1 month ago he had warned Sasuke about the dangers of sleep deprivation to a shinobi. Did you know that sleep deprivation is the #1 cause of death in a shinobi? He rubbed his face and groaned, making Rin stop eating and look at him with growing worry. Her twin gave her a look, and several messages were passed at once. They didn't think the Hokage would clear Naruto to receive missions if they saw how tired he was from just one sleepless night. Rin voiced her opposition, instead of wordlessly communicating it. I'm not going on any missions unless I'm sure you won't collapse when I'm gone. Naruto's brow lowered and his stare hardened, speaking to her without saying anything. Her twin jabbed her pointer finger on the table. Your problem is my problem, Naruto. That's how it's been. That's how it'll be. Mikoto's eyes jumped to Naruto, who was sending another voiceless message to his twin, frowning and clenching his right fist on the table. Rin didn't relent. We're done having this conversation. Their brother flattened his hand on the table, her lips pressed tightly together and his teeth grinding. Rin slammed her apron on the dining table, standing up with a glare and leaving for the kitchen. I said, we're done having this talk. Talk. Any other person would think the two were mad. Being their youngest sibling and used to Naruto and Rin's twin communication, Mikoto assumed that Rin's tiredness made her forget to keep her words from coming out of her mouth, instead of traveling in that odd wavelength her two older siblings shared. Naruto crumpled, leaning on his elbows and covering his face with his hands. Mikoto nervously chewed on her breakfast, doing her best not to audibly drink her glass of orange juice. I'm sorry you had to see that, sis. Naruto admitted, his muffled voice coming from behind his hands. He winced at the noise coming from the kitchen. This thing Orochimaru did to me is really wearing on our patience. The girl bobbed her head. It's fine. Dad wants me to find Granny Tsunade, right? It'll be over soon, even if I have to hogtie her and drag her home. Naruto opened his hands, setting his cheeks on his palms and sending a faint smile to his quirky sister. Thanks, he said softly. Mikoto beamed, returning to her breakfast by swallowing 2 forkfuls of eggs. Naruto brought her attention back with a gentle tap of his foot against hers. This doesn't mean you can't tell us what's going on with you. The girl slowed a little, her cheeks puffy with eggs and an eyebrow raised for her brother to elaborate. You know, if there's something going on with you, you can always tell us. We won't make fun of you or anything like that. Mikoto swallowed her food, brow knitted suspiciously. Okay, her brother shrugged. Just wanted you to know. He got up and walked around the dining table to the kitchen. Don't forget that. Mikoto hummed, her blue eyes following her brother to the kitchen. Okay. The clattering of dishes and the rush of water from the sink's tap stopped, followed by low mumbling as her siblings held a private meeting. Naruto might have inherited their mother's sensory abilities, and Rin might have inherited their father's clear-sightedness, but Mikoto inherited both Kushina and Minato's sharp hearing. Rin, I'm sorry. Look, I don't care if you don't appreciate what I'm doing. I really don't. I'd like it if you acknowledged I'm at least trying. There was a protracted silence and a short shuffle of feet. We had 4 close calls last night alone. 3 of them were my fault. Naruto interjected. Those weren't your fault. They were. Mikoto inelegantly chewed on her toast, trying not to look like she was hearing them. Rin started crying. Kami, what if you died? Her tone was hushed. What if you died and it's because I couldn't stay awake? Naruto didn't answer. There was more shuffling. Rin's voice became muffled. I just want this to end already. I want that poison out of you, so we can get back to normal. Suspecting that they were hugging, and that her big sister was speaking into her brother's chest, Naruto whispered. Me too. Mikoto got up and called out. Heading out now. Rin came from the kitchen and stood at the frame, sniffing and dabbing the bottom of her apron at the corners of her red-rimmed eyes. Hold on, Mikoto, Naruto's packing your lunch. The girl strode to the living room and sat down on the couch, picking up and fumbling with attaching her kunai and shuriken holster around her hip, clicking the ends together and shifting the pouch around to her lower back. Thanks, but don't worry about that. She cringed a little at the quick pain she felt in her casted arm, pausing her movement to make sure not to aggravate the broken arm anymore. When she was sure the pain was gone, she continued with her one-armed preparations, sliding on her already packed survival backpack and got up. Her left hand reached for her claymore, sliding the sheathed weapon down between her shoulder blades, under the backpack till the end of the large and long sword reached past her behind. She used to have her weapons sheathed on her hip, but drawing them from her back felt more convenient at the moment. Swiveling around to exit the house, she stopped when she bumped into Rin. Her big sister was blocking the entrance of the living room, holding Mikoto's forehead protector in one hand and a bento tin wrapped in a large handkerchief in her other. Rin scoffed, looking at her one-armed sister with a slight smile. Turn around, Miko. Mikoto huffed at the pet name, and did as she was told. The younger girl grunted as her sister unzipped her backpack, doing a quick scan of the contents to make sure everything was there. Then she eased in the wrapped tin inside, zipping the bag when she was done. She gripped the handle of the claymore, giving it a quick shake to see that the sheath was secure and accessible. Satisfied, Rin ran a soft hand through Mikoto's straight hair, smiling wistfully. Who'd have thought my Miko would be a ninja? Mikoto scoffed. Better believe it, sis. Rin set the forehead protector above her sister's brow, tying the headband under Mikoto's hair. She turned the girl around and got a good look at her. Mikoto didn't have bangs like hers or their mother. Her straight hair was all combed back and reaching her shoulders. Rin almost envied how smooth and untangled her baby sister's hair was, as her own curly hair was a nightmare and a half to manage on a good day. It didn't make her happy that Mikoto was going on missions so soon after the Chunin exams, especially in her injured state, but their father had assured her that Mikoto wouldn't be going alone. The twins were mentally preparing to hold on for a month. Has Naruto told you anything about Granny T? Rin asked. Mikoto shook her head, and Rin gripped her shoulders, maintaining eye contact. Okay. Don't take anything she says to heart. She's a bitter old lady. Bitter, old, drunk hag. Naruto pointedly shouted from the dining room. He began grumbling to himself. Rin rolled her eyes. Yeah. That. She became serious again, and the genin nodded. I know how hard it is for you not to take everything seriously. Mikoto pouted. Rin snorted a small laugh. Try to stay calm. You have a way with words, Miko. Use that instead. Yeah. Don't stoop to her level. Naruto supplied. Alright, Cranky, that's enough. Rin chuckled, standing upright and removing her hands from her sister's shoulders. She stood out of the way. Have a nice day. When you find that old drunkard, kick her in her fat ass, their brother called. Tell her it's from me. Bye-bye. Mikoto snickered as she jogged from the apartment. 6:01 a.m. Hokage's tower. Mikoto blinked at her father. The man raised an eyebrow, propping his elbows on his desk and leaning his head on his laced hands. Will that be a problem? I mean, bewildered, Mikoto scratched the top of her head, catching the musical twinkle in her father's eye at her clearly uncomfortable gesture. I kinda assumed I'd be going with Kakashi-sensei and the others. The Hokage scoffed. And if that's the case, can you tell me with full certainty that you won't slow down the mission by fighting with Sasuke? The girl frowned and threw her face away, denying nothing. Minato nodded. I thought so. I made this decision because getting Tsunade back quickly is too important to gamble with childish arguments. He broke my arm. Mikoto retorted, gesturing wildly to her right arm. You've broken his before. Minato stated, matter of fact. The girl's rapid temper fell flat into a deep wince. He healed, and so will you. With time. He collected a scroll from his desk and held it to her, still sitting behind his desk. Here. Sulking, Mikoto dragged her feet to the Hokage's desk. Taking the scroll and letting gravity unfurl it as she held the top up with her left hand. She scanned the mission specs. Mission specifications. Identity of the target, Tsunade Senju, henceforth on mission and until safe retrieval referred to as target. Purpose of the mission, find and retrieval, henceforth filed under retrieval. Target's last known location, Zayaki, hot water country. Current state of the target, unknown/alive, henceforth considered alive till proven otherwise. Manner of approach, at your own discretion. Target is known to be brash and confrontational, shinobi on duty is to take note. There is a likeliness for a violent confrontation in response to the retrieval mission. Shinobi on duty is to refrain as much as possible to not respond in kind. Target is known to travel with Shizen Kato, whose current state is alive. Intention is for target to return peacefully. Mission priority, A. Mission class, A. Shinobi on duty, Sai Shimura, Genin, Mikoto Namikaze, Genin, Yugao Yuzuki, Jounin. Mikoto lowered the scroll, rolling it up with one hand. Sai Shimura. Did he graduate from my year? Councilman Danzo's relative. He wanted assurance that the mission would go smoothly, and Sai is that assurance, apparently, the Hokage explained with an encouraging nod. He's been a genin a year longer than you. From what I've seen, he's quite skilled. If he's so skilled, where is he now? Minato smirked, getting back to his work. You're the last one to get here. Mikoto balked, startled by the revelation. They've already been briefed and are waiting for you at the northern gate. Good luck, Mikoto. There was a good 20 minutes of quiet in the Hokage's office after she left to join her fellow shinobi on duty, where the man read through previous mission reports left on his desk from the night before. Only missions higher than AB class were personally read by him, as anything lower could be safely handled by his assistants, the two of whom were seated outside of his office. Any decisions that needed to be implemented due to the conclusion of C-class mission or lower, were briefed to the Hokage and formally submitted for the Hokage's stamp. This wasn't necessarily a decentralization or deconcentration of power, as the Hokage was still widely seen as both the unquestioned head of state and head of government, a military dictator in every sense. Minato just designated some responsibilities to reduce his workload. And this initiative drastically reduced the weight of paperwork piled on his desk, though only slightly. Konoha was still a massive hidden village, in geographical size, population, and sphere of influence. Either there was some sort of international issue a shinobi on duty would purposely or accidentally commit on foreign soil needing help to be bailed out, or the trade department of the village would say that the food and agriculture department were overstepping by providing fish farmers too much independence to sell their good, without the consent of the trade department. Or maybe, there was a short drought, an occasion that happened every 6 months in Konoha, and farmers, as usual, were panicking, inflating food prices and scrambling for water, when there was in fact more than enough for everyone. Or the clusterfuck of a situation where one of his own ninjas temporarily incapacitated the entire single/unfaithful kunoichi population of Suna, an event so notorious. The perpetrator had a cult following, and the weak still lived on in infamy. Or when an Iron Country samurai supposedly committed ritualistic suicide and was hung by his balls. Now those situations had been held to resolve. There were allied and neutral villages that requested loans from Konoha, either to pay their underpaid civilian population or to spend it on their militaries. Here Minato pinched his nose with a weary exhale. He, and the diplomats sent to those villages, would always do a moral service by advising the loan takers to put the money into something more sustainable, like agriculture or trade. The borrowers would just nod their heads eagerly and hold out their hands for the money. At least those loan takers owed them, and Konoha always collected its debts. Then there were IWA scouts pushing and prodding at Konoha's border, doing their utmost to try his patience, and needing to be deterred every so often. Then there were the missing ninjas, Konoha's or otherwise. Although not many emergencies were overt enough to cause mass panic in the Hidden Leaf village, there was always something going on that concerned Konoha, and he was constantly kept busy. Minato was interrupted by a knock. Yes, he called. A Chunin assistant opened the door. They entered and stood at attention. Lord Hokage, sir. Yes, Daisuke. What is it? He mumbled, signing an official order for his ANBU and non-ANBU elite jounin to collaborate on dissolving Orochimaru's hidden sound network. Without looking, he held 2 scrolls over his shoulder. To his back, an ANBU operative tiger leaped down from somewhere, collected the scroll, and rushed to deliver it to Konoha's black operative commander and Minato's head of shinobi affairs. The aforenamed Daisuke bowed. Mr. Naruto and Miss Rin are here for the meeting. The Hokage grunted. Yes, bring them in. The Chunin opened the door wider and stood aside for his children to enter. Good morning, Lord Hokage, sir. The two greeted in unison, parting ways as Naruto sat on the chair before the Hokage's desk and Rin went to the window, plopping down and leaning back to catch more sunlight. Within the confines of the Namikaze clan before they mostly died out, they joked that flash step release holders were human solar panels, soaking in the rays of the sun and superchanging it to chakra when needed. They were also compared to cats, lounging on the porch and basking in the sun. Minato saw the tiredness of Rin's sagged shoulders, and decided that she wasn't in the mood to be joked with this morning. Naruto on the other hand. Kami, Naruto, you look terrible. The graying Namikaze beamed and his teenage son glared murderous ire through simmering purple eyes. Like, worse than normal. You and Mikoto both are just one person. The boy scolded, crossing his right ankle over his left knee. She already said that this morning. Pleased with himself, the man reclined and smirked, lacing his fingers over his stomach. She does take after me, doesn't she? He posed with his chin between his thumb and middle fingers, smoldering. She's got my roguish good looks, and my way with the ladies. The man made sure to roll that last word on his tongue, and Rin shrieked, covering her ears and closing her eyes. Dad, stop. The man howled in laughter. Naruto scoffed, joking right back. She's also got your bald spot and your bad-smelling farts. Minato's laugh increased, tumbling back and holding his stomach. The Chunin assistant didn't know how to remind the father-children trio of his presence, so he just spoke up. Lord Hokage, sir. Trying to breathe, Minato asked. Daisuke. He wiped the tears streaming from his eyes with a handkerchief, humming. Remind me again if I have any other meeting. By 10, you have a meeting with Lord Kazekage to talk about maintaining the Konoha-Suna highway and on training exercises for Konoha and Suna ninjas. By noon, you have tea with the elders. By 1:30, Lady Mabuki Haruno wishes to speak to you concerning the recent surge in violence against Konoha's traveling merchants. And lastly, you wanted me to remind you to contact Lord Jiraiya. No specified time. Remind me to do that when I'm finished with Naruto and Rin. Yes, sir. The Hokage waved him off, and the Chunin left with a bow. Long day ahead. Rin remarked. I feel sorry you have to have tea with those elders. You get used to how predictable it is. Some days. And besides, the elders aren't so bad if you get to understand where they're coming from. They're just. Minato shrugged, looking for the right word. Old-fashioned. Their time was harsh. Survive or die. Peacetime and Konoha not having major fights with our neighbors, is something they're still not used to. There's some wisdom in them, though, if you look past the. The twins winced at that last part. The elders could be a bit biased in their opinions, especially when it came to allies. Searching his desk for something, he glanced at his son. Long night? Yeah. Naruto slouched further into his chair. Isolating the poison from my organs while I sleep is difficult. While he was awake, on the other hand, it wasn't a big issue, if not bothersome. Don't worry about me. You wanted to give us a mission, HM. The man finally found what he was looking for. It was a featureless brown binder, 2 inches thick with black and white pictures poking out from the corners. The binder was stuffed full with sheets of paper and those pictures. He passed the book to his son, looking to his daughter as she turned her gaze to them. Take a look at this and tell me what you think. The girl hopped off the window and walked to her brother, leaning down with her right arm over Naruto's right shoulder and her head peering over her brother's left. A quarter of the way into the book, Rin wondered. Kiri's civil war is over. Naruto mumbled. Supposedly. He looked at a clean, grayscale picture of the Mizukage and the rebel leader, Meiterum, shaking hands in front of the village gates. The Mizukage and the rebels reached an agreement, and called for an end to the war. Meiterum's now the head of Bloodline Matters. Rin read the caption underneath another picture, one where the former rebel leader was shown at the back of a desk, busily ordering an eye patch wearing ninja, while at the same time answering a landline call. She called for rebels in all parts of Kiri to stop fighting, and for Kiri refugees to come back home. They all pursed their lips and grunted. It seemed the three of them were more alike than they thought. Their thoughts on the Kiri matter, for instance, were mostly the same. Kiri had been in a civil war since the very end of the Third Great Shinobi War, 20 or so years ago, when the 4th Mizukage had taken the position of Kage of Kiri. Before his rise and before the war, Yagura had been a strong driving force in favor of the destruction of Konoha due to several past experiences. The man was relatively unknown even by his Kiri peers until he spearheaded many political kidnappings, many of which were vastly successful in increasing the weight of his name. The first was the kidnap and ransoming of the Fire Lord's oldest son. Then came the assassination of a dozen waterfall dignitaries on Kiri soil, and then followed the kidnapping he was most known for in Konoha. An event that was now known to be the flash that heralded the end of the Third War. A large squad of Kiri ninjas spirited Rin no Haru away from her teammates while they were on a mission, and then released her days later, close to Konoha's southeastern wall. She was guided by a number of following Kiri ninjas. The 3 tails had been sealed inside her and timed to release at a certain close proximity to Konoha, until the now only other member of Team Minato came to her rescue, only for her to reveal her current state and impale herself on Kakashi's Chidori. Till this day, the leaf was still unable to recover Rin no Haru's body, stolen from where she was last seen alive by some unknown person. Yet, rumors persisted that Yagura had sealed the 3 tails inside himself, and mastered its power. That could be true, or it could easily be a lie. Still, Yagura's ascension to Mizukage was strongly contested. Till Yagura assassinated all 11 of his fellow Mizukage aspirants in a free-for-all battle for the position, the 11 being S-ranked ninjas in their own right, and being against the platform Yagura stood on, they collectively saw the small, childlike man as a threat to their village, and joined forces to eliminate him first and foremost. They didn't succeed. This was before rumors of Yagura having the three tails began spreading. Konoha's hidden spectators that day reported the same thing. He became a monster. He showed no emotion, no hesitation and no regret thereafter, snapping bone and drowning his countrymen with clinical efficiency and quickness. When he had eliminated his last opponent and covered head to toe in blood, he was no longer childlike in appearance. Naruto and Rin looked at a recovered photograph of the Mizukage, with his foot stepped through the shattered skull of his former opponent, blood and brain matter caking his foot. The image was made worse by the condescending, almost lifeless, look at the broken corpse. Immediately upon taking the position, Yagura purged his council of bloodline holders and bloodline sympathetic, executing them and their entire extended families publicly. The next photo was of a long row of hooded men, women and children, strung up on gallows. Their hands were tied at their backs and their ankles were restrained by ropes. Heads were driven into pikes. Feet were sawed off and hands were broken. Clan compounds were burned, corpses were desecrated. Children cried for their murdered parents, left with their mangled corpses. The twins glowered at the reminder of the Mizukage's emotionless brutality. They knew all too well of the Mizukage's hate. For Konoha. For their clan. For them. Yagura began nurturing generations of bloodline haters and destroyers. Bloodline holders and bloodline sympathetics banded together and fought back, beginning with some isolated skirmishes where bloodline bearers brawled with traitors for being spat on, or when a bomb was exploded on the floor level of the Mizukage's building, killing scores and injuring even more. This all culminated in the start of Kiri's bloody civil war. Minato quietly supported the rebel forces with food and medicine, helping Kiri refugees escape and housing them in the village. There was a thriving district in the Hidden Leaf populated by former Kiri residents, who had adopted Konoha as their home. They were mainly fishers and rice farmers, though more than a few assimilated themselves into Konoha's ninja force. Although sectioned off somewhat into what was called the Kiri district, the refugees were provided as much support as any other person, as long as they showed honesty in their intentions. Some 8 clans and hundreds of refugees lived and worked in Konoha, bettering their lives and Konoha's economy. Kiri was the only village that had a named district in Konoha, something their ally, Suna, didn't yet have. Konoha's support for the rebel forces was unstated in any public record. Minato recognized that allowing Yagura absolute power in such a vital hub as Kiri spelt disaster for Konoha and its allies. Kiri had a wealth of shinobi knowledge concerning hunter-ninja training, weapons making, aquatic agriculture, and the oil reserves located in their territory. And though disturbed by the reality of their intentions, the rebel leader didn't care why Konoha was sending them supplies. No village or country had any selfless intention when they chose a side in the civil war. Kyumo sided with the Mizukage, stating that they wanted bloodline holders exported from Kiri to Kyumo. Hidden Marshes supported the rebels because many of their citizens had their lives rooted in Kiri, and the bloodline genocide so close to their borders was a matter of national security. Suna, Iwa and Snow Country were decidedly neutral, offering asylum to those that wandered over their borders, doing so to boost the numbers of prospective shinobi and improve their economies with the injection of willing manpower. Selflessness in this world was always met with justified suspicion. The ANBU stationed in the corners of the office observed the 3 Namikes contemplate in silence, Rin taking the other seat before the Hokage's desk and gingerly accepting the plain brown binder when her brother offered it to her to read. Realistically, Naruto began with a murmur, the Mizukage's views can be negotiated with. Clan genocide, Rin whispered, appalled and shaking her head. Bloodline genocide. How can the Mizukage reach a truce with the rebels, right? Minato hummed, looking at his children with doubtful blue eyes. How can 20 years of war just end like that, all of a sudden? Without warning. Have there been any bloodline purges recently? Naruto posed the question. Minato shook his head. Not since last month. Then, after that, the truce was called. Kiri sealed its borders ever since. No one can get in, except refugees and authorized personnel. Pointing to the binder, Minato said. This information was 2 decades in the making. The spy that compiled them submitted their last entry before the Chunin exam started, then they suddenly went dark. A grim silence fell on them, and on the observing ANBU shinobi. Minato nodded. I can't confirm for sure, but I know my spy is damn well unkillable. They'll be in hiding, gathering intel and stockpiling data, till they hear from me to come back home. Rin closed the book, and shared looks with her father and brother. You're both thinking the same thing, right? They nodded. Although I can't, in good conscience, send you out on the field in your condition. Minato said to his son. I also can't send Rin to Kiri alone, given the risks. Alone, Naruto and Rin were a rank. Together, the Red Demon and the Angel of Konoha were high S rank. No other team in Konoha could boast this feat. Naruto smirked, realizing that his resolution to not being given a mission until Tsunade was returned was unfounded. So, you're saying, I want both of you to find out what's really going on in Kiri. He sat forward, setting his forearms on the table and narrowing a look at the twins, who were growing increasingly unable to contain their excitement. Do not engage unless you absolutely cannot avoid it. This isn't a combat mission. It's purely reconnaissance. This mission would be off the books. S rank till I decide otherwise. An unspoken warning went to the spectating black operatives in the room. Warning of pain and suffering if a word of this mission was breathed outside of the confines of the Hokage's office. Find what you can and get back to me immediately. Am I understood? The two shot to their feet, stoic and determined. Yes, Lord Hokage, sir. Gear up and get into Kiri undetected. He tossed Rin a scroll and she opened it. It was blank. Look for crow's feet and give them that scroll to confirm it's you. Listen to what they have to say and work off what they've already done. Since you can't go to Kiri directly, you'll have to find other ways inside. Use your discretion. The twins nodded. Understood, Lord Hokage, sir. Testament to their speed, the two were packed and southeastbound on a ship to Hidden Marsh within 5 minutes. Chapter 6. Ishikawa Fields. Grasslands north of Konoha. Grass country. Mikoto liked to think she was a very open-minded person. Sure, she might have a small, harmless temper, but she never claimed to be perfect. She wasn't the kind of person that was quick to judge whether or not she would get along with someone. Don't judge a book by its cover, was a popular saying. There could be common ground between her and everyone around her, if she looked for it. Sai Shimura not only threw a wrench at her belief system but he threw the whole damn tool shed. Oi, washboard. Mikoto ground her teeth, a thick vein pulsing on the side of her temple and her hands curled into fists. Digging so hard into her palms she was sure her fingernails were leaving deep grooves. Washboard, look, look. A rabbit. He didn't get a reply from Mikoto, walking down the meandering path through the field of grass and pointedly keeping her eyes ahead. Have you ever had a rabbit? He jogged to her side and prodded her cheek. Did you hear what I said? When she didn't reply, he continued. Well, have you? She grumbled, not giving him so much as a passing side eye. The boy smiled, eyes closed and tittering. I get the feeling you don't like my nickname for you, washboard. Rounding on Sai, Mikoto's eyes blackened and her iris turned red, elongating at the top and bottom, widening with hatred and bloodlust. The voice she spoke with was demonic, enough to make Yugao Yuzuki cautious. You think? I read somewhere that fun nicknames are great for strengthening new bonds of friendship. He examined her from head to toe, the sickly false smile ever present on his lips and his pleased eyes nearly closed. I just chose a prominent feature. Or in your case, non-existent. Yugao just made it in time to hold Mikoto back from wailing on a chuckling Sai. I am not a washboard. The Jounin laughed, nervous. Alright, Sai, that's enough. Stepping back respectfully, shocking Mikoto so much with that singular action, the boy nodded. Hi, Yugao-senpai. When Yugao was sure Mikoto had calmed down, she released her. Mikoto huffed, straightening her shirt and bearing a short snarl at Sai when he smiled at her, facing front and continuing the journey. How come Yugao doesn't get a nickname? Mikoto grumbled after a little while. Yugao-senpai isn't my friend, she's my senpai. Then, to get a reaction, he added. Plus, I actually respect her. Mikoto pulled up the sleeve of her broken arm, fire rushing through her veins hot enough to forget she couldn't use that arm. You know what? Mikoto, Sai, I said that's enough. Yugao ordered, her tone strong and her glare harsh. Sai, play nice. Mikoto, don't let him annoy you. Scoffing and smiling as ever, Sai raised his hands in defeat. Alright. Despite Yugao's advice, Mikoto boiled. Who does this pale kid think he is? I'm not. Flat. Saying that Sai Shimura was pale was like saying that water was wet. It was like he had lived his whole life underground, pale enough for Mikoto to spy some blue-purple veins on his neck and the back of his hands, catching them in just the right light. He had dark eyes and black hair that drooped messily. He wore a short-sleeve, dark blue half-shirt with long-sleeve mesh armor underneath with black shinobi pants that reached above his ankles and light brown ninja sandals. His weapon, Mikoto observed, was a tanto sheath slanted to his right shoulder on his back, a shuriken pouch on his lower back and a kunai pouch on the side of his right thigh, also carrying a side bag with what she assumed were his camping necessities. His forehead protector was on his forehead. Wherever it was this pale reptile had slithered out from must have been dark and lonely. She could easily pick on him about how pale he was, but she shook her head. I'll be picking rocks out of my mouth for weeks if I stoop to his level. Making an exaggerated show of avoiding him, Mikoto jogged up to the team's jounin, beaming. Yugao, on the other hand, wasn't an unfamiliar face. The deputy ANBU captain was frequently called to babysit Mikoto, as the twins were frequently too busy from when they acquired their forehead protectors. She was also the first person outside of her family Mikoto grew comfortable around, which meant she more than often invited herself to Yugao and Enko's small apartment when she felt like it, and foraged for food in their fridge. Mikoto didn't know much about Yugao's family, other than that she was the last-born, only daughter with 10 older brothers. Her parents ran a big farm and the earliest part of her life, aside from trying to survive being mobbed by her brothers, was working on the fields. Juggling academy schoolwork with tending cows out to pasture and fighting her brothers for a place at the house, Yugao was understandably strong-willed. She wasn't a woman of many words, and Mikoto respected that. Yugao gave her a short smile. "How's the arm?" "Itches," Mikoto admitted with a shrug, shifting the casted arm a little. "Doc says I should be able to remove it by next week." A sympathetic corner of her lips quirked up, turning her eyes to the road ahead. "Must suck. I mean, it's not the best." Mikoto breathed in and out, enjoying the fresh air and the grass extending as far as the eye could see. "But I guess I'm lucky." The woman lifted an eyebrow, briefly turning her glance to the young girl. "How so?" "I didn't bruise my ribs." "Again. Which is good." Yugao seemed to accept this with a purse of her lips and a nod, looking forward. "And the kyubi makes my healing faster. Less painful. All that good stuff." Of course, Mikoto knew she housed the nine-tailed fox. From a young age, Minato wanted her to come to terms with her gigantic chakra reserves, the sheer volatility of the chakra, and expressed the dire need for her to not explode with quick rage. Her father's thinking was that if she was aware of this and they answered any questions she had concerning the beast sealed in her gut, it would be easier for her to cope. Her father didn't want her to be an emotionless robot, or whatever Naruto was, or an overactive lightning bolt, like Rin. He wanted her to be reasonable. There weren't any active plans to train her to master her beast chakra, not until Minato heard from Jiraiya. But this awareness of the monster jailed in her body gave her better perspective on why she needed to keep a firm cap on any extreme emotions. There was a great deal of trust her father confided in her. It was humbling. Mikoto wasn't sure if Kurama was in fact the kyubi. Kurama was more like a voice in her head, telling her secrets and revealing facts. Ancient truths and forgotten jutsu, when she asked politely. The Rasengan she tried at the Chunin exams was her first time displaying the technique outside of her mind, and it was because of Kurama's guidance she could pull it off, as incomplete as it was. The reason Kurama told her these things and taught her how to use them was simple. It didn't want her to die a worthless death. Mikoto wasn't too keen on that occurring either, so it was a win-win in her opinion. Was she eager to reveal that her genius was, in part, due to Kurama's influence? Not really. Her Jinchuriki status wasn't a secret in the village, although the Nine Tails had destroyed many lives and ruined the village as a whole. There was a certain level of reassurance comforting the citizens when they remembered that a level 10 seal master and an S-rank team lived in close proximity to her. There also needed to be a general shinobi knowledge included in the civilian and ninja academy curriculum, where the basics of fuinjutsu and ninjutsu were taught. There were still dissenting voices calling for tighter restraints and limitations on her. Some of those voices even sat in the council, but 12 years of nothing occurring dampened the noise. Even now, Yugao had been provided a handful of seals to suppress the kyubi's chakra if something happened to Mikoto, and her grip on her emotions unraveled. Just in case. Have you ever been this far from Konoha? Yugao wondered, making casual conversation. She was fine with silence, all of her friends knew her to be a quiet person, but she could feel the awkwardness from Mikoto. The girl was fumbling with her fingers and searching her mind for something to talk about. She brightened up at the question. Waves as far as I've gone. This is my first time. Mikoto glanced over her shoulder to Sai, whose drooping smile turned back up when he saw her blue gaze. They began marching up a steep hill. The place we're going to, Zayaki, what do you know about it? Not really in the mood for a long-winded verbal instruction that was more Kakashi's thing, Yugao made a flippant gesture over her shoulder. Sai, what do you know about Zayaki? The other genin was quick to jump on the question, his voice monotonous as he monologued. Zayaki is a border city at the southwestern corner of hot water country, strategically located in the general area where fire country and grass country met hot water country. The intention was to make Zayaki into a trading hub for hot water, which had at that time been known across the continent for its hot springs alone. Although populated with hot springs and massage parlors, Zayaki is no longer a trading town, but in fact a gambling city. This is due to the massive importation of bootleg grass country wine by a small-time gang in hot water and a movement of cigarettes from fire country, encouraging less than friendly attention by delinquents and ne'er-do-wells. Sai rambled on, reciting, word for word, the textbook he had crammed hours ahead of this mission. The hot water government decided to scrap their hopes for a trading hub, replacing it with profiteering from the surge in alcohol and cigarettes. They did this by snatching control of the importation of wine and cigarettes from the Yakuza, making the price enticingly low and enacting special laws for Zayaki alone. The hot water government wasn't even trying to hide their greediness. They saw a chance to make profit, and they grabbed it with both hands and feet. The hot water government and Zayaki administration were principally a Yakuza of their own. Fortunately, the Zayaki experiment worked remarkably well, if certain precautions had not been taken, and certain prison sentences hadn't been distributed. Zayaki would have been a cesspool of depravity and illicit behavior. Now, it was a government-regulated cesspool of depravity and illicit behavior. Yugao scoffed. Violent crime was down to 5%, the presence of an organized gang was close to 0%, and hot water's fumbling economy skyrocketed. There were no residential houses for people to live long-term and hide inside as they drank their stores of wine, only hotels and such, where payment was made monthly and the bars were constantly flowing with wine. For those that thought they could live good, clean lives while in Zayaki, there were restaurants and roadside food vendors, where they could find something to eat and drink that wasn't going to make them high. Probably. The intention was so blatant. Yugao scoffed again. Sai finished by saying, although there isn't a strict age limit for people entering the city, anyone below the age of 18 is prohibited from taking alcohol or narcotics of any kind, including tea and coffee. Alcohol and narcotics vendors are warned by punishment of death if any minor is caught intoxicated. It was strangely moral of them. They reached the top of the hill and bore witness to a mile-long line of carts and carriages, easing little by little through Zayaki's gate. Sai made a sweeping gesture to it all, at the adventure awaiting them inside the continent's most corrupt city, his fake grin reaching ear to ear. Welcome to Zayaki, washboard. Oh, the wave strait, southeast of Konoha. Naruto honestly wanted to say that the boat ride was uneventful. It wasn't. First, they were hit with a storm. Then he was jarred into remembering that Rin wasn't a water person. Leaning listlessly at the side of the boat, Rin moaned terribly, her eyes swirling and her green face reflecting back to her on the murky blue water. Her cheeks puffed out. Wag. Naruto kept her hair away from her face, absent-mindedly patting her back. It's all right. It's okay. I'm sorry, Naruto. His sister wept, tears muddying her face. I'm so sorry. No. Don't apologize. He consoled her with a shout over the storm, wincing a little when she released another stream of sickness into the water. The fishermen on the small boat were distracted by the harsh lapping of water against the side of the fishing vessel, roaring to their comrades, throwing nets into the water and capitalizing on the disturbance of the sudden storm. The fishermen, with some use of chakra, stood at the front and end of the ship, bellowing in frequent wind from their lips to push away the storm from tearing their boat to bits, not so powerful as to calm the storm. We should have gone through wave, taken a cruise to marsh. He cringed at the foul exhale of undigested breakfast from his sister. It's my fault. I forgot. No. At this point, Rin was dry heaving air. The twins were disguised as fishermen, wearing gray rain ponchos, boots and waterproof caps, shading their faces as best as they could until they docked in Hidden Marsh. The secrecy of their mission demanded they stay incognito, except for the captain of the ship, who ran over to them, carefully trying not to slip. "Is this storm usual, Captain?" "We're in the middle of autumn," Naruto bellowed, collecting a canteen of fresh water from the large fisherman and helping his sister wash her face. The captain sent an odd look to his left, yelling in his coarse accent. "'Tis odd, Namikaze. We's not expectin' a storm for 'nother month. I's thinkin' Sumathun's bringin' the storm." Naruto's eyebrows lifted. "Sea monster." The captain nodded. "Aye." Rin spat, eyes wide like dinner plates. "They exist. Aye, miss. Overgrown seafoods what they are." A large wave punched into the boat, forcing the twins to connect to the ground with chakra. Naruto reached for the captain, securing him down when it seemed that the larger man was going to fall overboard. "Damned kraken!" the captain bellowed, his booming voice carrying over the storm. He waved his fist angrily. "I paid good money fare this here ship, kraken." Rin repeated, her voice cracking with hysteria. "Did you just say kraken?" The captain didn't answer, rumbling to his quarters for his harpoons, cursing to the wind and the water. Their little boat couldn't handle any more of this storm, being held together by the efforts of the former ninjas exhaling wind to counter the powerful fists of the storm. A hurricane was gathering in the distance, far enough for them to see the funneling tip rise higher and higher into the sky, but close enough for the boat to get drawn toward it. "Kami, damn it!" Naruto shouted. He pushed his sister to stay where she was. "Look after the boat. I'll go kill this thing." She didn't put up a fight, partly relieved that she didn't need to accompany him on this blistering storm. "If you die," her brother beamed, a bright expression on his pallid face. "I can't die, sis." He leapt overboard and ran on the water into the storm, the red mist of his dash quickly lost to the wind. Naruto soon found out that it wasn't, in fact, a kraken causing the storm. Which was good? It was Samahata. Which was worse? Oh, Hokage's tower. Konoha. Minato hummed briefly, his blue eyes lifting up and looking to his office's open window when he felt a small, micro-tremor run up his feet. It was a telltale sign that his son had tapped into his ghost speed release, surpassing normal Jounin speeds with a crack of air. This sensation wasn't something people outside of the clan could easily pick up. Minato was inclined to worry. Naruto didn't often need to resort to using ghost speed outside of a properly timed ghost flicker technique, normally slowing down to flash step release speeds, which itself was miles faster than high Jounin. The Hokage pushed down his worry. He had to believe that his son would come out of whatever scuffle he was in fine. He sighed and rolled his shoulders, bending back to work. An assistant had written for him a speech to commission a second hydroelectric dam in the village, an event to take place within the week. The first hydroelectric dam was built in the second Hokage's era, and for years it had been struggling to raise the needed power for the ever-growing village. Diesel engines had been an option for a long while, but when many of them were on at the same time, there was too much noise and smoke pollution. Solar panels would have been the next best option, but Konoha's scientists were having trouble building them, so Minato charged his scientists to study under waterfall, learning about their allies' hydroelectric dam and using this knowledge to build an improvement on their own. Although, technically, the new dam was already functioning to supply electricity across the village and the people were all the more glad for it, the village's council pressed the Hokage to formalize the commissioning. Minato didn't see the need. He had done a lot of projects in and around the village that had just been open for public use, without any formal commissioning. Renovating the near-abandoned civilian academy library, expanding the intensive section of the hospital, collaborated with Suna to build the Sunakanoha Highway, built scores of houses at the western side of village, upgraded the village's bank, electrified 90% of the village, constructed telephone lines and phone booths around the village, resurrected the village's dying post office and made the messenger hawk handlers join forces with the post office, and other such things. This time, the council stressed that the hydroelectric dam was something that had been in dire need for many years. Voltage going into houses had formerly been too low or too high, breaking appliances that were properly unplugged, electricity wasn't assured for the whole day, and winter always meant there was a power draft, where citizens had to brave the cold without electricity. The speech would silence some critics, at the very least. Minato was the peacetime Hokage, after all, his focus was improving village infrastructure and creating/maintaining alliances, not just fortifying the village and rushing Ninja Academy students out onto the field. Konoha was globally known to prefer quality over quantity when it came to many things, like the skill of its ninjas. It was why Konoha had more globally renowned ninja and were infamous for their military logistics, instead of planning to use sheer numbers to overwhelm enemy forces, like IWA. Minato snorted at that, recalling how he had decimated 1,000 IWA ninjas on his own. Sure, a large amount of skill was involved in that slaughter and a larger amount of chakra had been expelled, but it didn't excuse IWA in any way. Still, Minato didn't like how quiet Hidden Rock was being, only sending scouts to push at Konoha's borders and observe the village from afar. His eyes narrowed when a single sheet of paper fluttered through his window, rising in preparation to flash away with the paper in case it was a bomb. His guards had the same idea, diving down without hesitation and snagging the gaily fluttering paper from the air. ANBU operative Tiger checked for traps on the paper, keeping his body between the paper and his Hokage. Monkey concentrated her senses for an incoming attack, poking her head out and flickering her eyes all about, while Rat and Horse stood guard in front and behind Minato, their weapons at the ready. Safe, Tiger declared, releasing a small breath. No traps, sir. What is it? Minato walked past Rat and collected the lonesome sheet of paper from Tiger. The scrawled words on the paper made Minato's face turn down with foreboding. In the writer's haste, they were unable to finish the last word of the three-word letter. Send help. The wave straight, southeast of Konoha. Naruto narrowed his eyes, charging deep into the storm and running low on the water. Cold sea mist hit his face and sharp rain beat his waterproof cap, skidding left and right on the turbulent waters, blazing up a wave curling high enough to blot out the sky before him. Each powerful step he made oozed steamy red afterimages, tearing into the top of the wave and leaping through. Soaring through the air, the world stilled. Naruto's rain poncho flapped harder when he opened his arms and legs to catch as much air as possible, soaring in that moment of aerial calm. The hurricane spiraled in his front, a funneling storm of water and mist, twisting from the sea and disappearing in the sky. The sea below whirled, sucked to that singular catastrophic point, raising defiant waves rolling outwards. Naruto's purple eyes spun, iris converging to a point before widening, expanding and revolving with three tomo glaring expressionlessly into the heart of the storm. He saw the creature causing the hurricane, a man-sized thing that pulsed purplish chakra. The archaic web of chakra network running from its narrow end to the largish top, reaching a gaping jaw, trickled with an unharmonious cluster of foreign chakra. One strain of chakra Naruto found that wasn't yet shared into the creature's chakra network was tucked into a ball at the very middle of the sea monster's chakra reserves. The chakra in the creature's gut wasn't alive, while the surrounding it stormed hot and cold. The creature wasn't mindless. It was screaming. It was mourning. Naruto recognized the violent rapidity that was the creature's chakra, first seeing it in his father the day his wife was killed, lying dead on his lap and unknowing of the child reading his chakra network from afar. His eyes bugged out, bringing his forearms to his face and his knees to his elbows, letting himself get sucked into the storm. Naruto started in a ball, keeping his arms and legs close to his middle and gritting his teeth at the bellow of the storm in his ears. The mix of chakra and water bashed and smashed into him, cycling him upwards into the sky. The hurricane whipped him round and round, flinging him higher and higher up the funnel, yet he remained as calm as possible, trusting his intuition not to steer him into the grave. In that spiraling rise, he turned his Sharingan stare to the sea creature causing this storm, getting a more definite image of it, using the chakra network to create an outline and filling in the gaps himself. It looked like a club, with a gaping maw and shuddering scales, raised in a noticeable 45-degree angle. Round and round, higher and higher, Naruto became more and more sure that the insanity of the creature was born from an uncomfortably sentient sorrow. His brow knit and his lips turned down. Naruto wasn't one for compassion, not for anyone that didn't share his last name, but even he was forced to feel something when he saw the stark similarity of the monster's mourning with that of his father's. Lashing out at everything, thoughtless of others, feral with rage. Nearing the top of the hurricane, Naruto shook the memory from his head with a hard clench of his teeth. He opened his arms and got his legs underneath him, building chakra up in his gut and holding his breath. Then he was thrown out of the top of the hurricane, tossed into the atmosphere. The air was thin, electric with the creature's chakra yet light of oxygen. Naruto gazed into the darkness of space, his Sharingan beginning an anti-clockwise grind. Then he started falling back into the mouth of the storm. He turned in the air and moved toward the rim of the hurricane, clapping his palms together, and a sharp crack of chakra briefly lit the sky in dark red, a premature sunset that spanned the wave strait. He called his jutsu, and the occupants of the wave strait, fishermen on his boat and other boats caught in the storm, bore witness to a miracle. The start of a red demon folktale. Ghost speed release, water style, breath taker. The red sky shone, choked with chakra and focusing down into the hurricane. Like a distorted drill, the red chakra traveled into the storm and wound through it, around it, turning blue water red and sucking in the turbulent noise of the hurricane. The mist of chakra expelling from Naruto's body as he channeled his bloodline colored the hurricane crimson. Mesmerized from the sight, Rin's jaw dropped, arms now drooped from pushing waves from the boat with exhaled gusts of wind. The captain of the boat stopped, the storm lulled in their favor, and the other boats on the strait found the water to be relatively calm. Though no one really noticed this. They just gazed at the red hurricane awed and afraid. Reaching from the blue sea and merging into the crimson sky, the storm twisted with deafening noiselessness. The captain of the boat breathed, goosebumps rising on his arms. In all my years. A red hurricane. In the eye of the storm, Naruto wrapped the monster in a bubble of pressurized red water and examined it. There weren't any pictures of Samahata, but Naruto put together all the written descriptions in his mind. The vibration generated ringing in his fingertips, all 10 digits were dipped into the water prison of the thrashing sea beast, causing the water to tremble at a cellular level. The pressure increased, becoming similar to the depth pressure of thousands of miles under the sea. It squeezed the writhing Kiri sword, holding it together firmer and harder, preventing not so much as a twitch of motion. Calm down, big guy. Naruto whispered, using his chakra as a shell to encase the water, while the molecular vibrations of his fingers pressurized the water prison. He was smart enough to know that if he made the mistake of pushing chakra into the water prison, it would only strengthen the sorrowful sword. He did to Samahata what he wished he could have done for his father when he was younger. Comfort him. He was young, no one would blame him for reacting to his father's raised walls by raising his own, hating the world and shutting it out. Days, weeks, and months after his wife's passing, Minato blocked out his children, and his son lashed back, as if it was his responsibility to do so. Neither refused to understand that both were going through the exact same thing. Older now, he regretted not opening up to his father, limiting his humanity to his twin and blocking out Mikoto for the better part of her infancy. Minato had experienced loss on a greater scale than Naruto perceived, since he had watched his clan die out, leaving him behind. Their grieving threatened to tear their suffering apart. Konoha credited Naruto for being a genius, but he accepted that Rin was the smarter twin. She knew that her father's heart was still too large, even after years of being an infamous shinobi, and that losing someone he loved with his entire being impacted him terribly, more so than seeing his clan wither and die. Rin was their bridge, heartbroken as she was at the death of her mother. A tether linking the family together. She retaught the family the words that brought them back together. It's all right. Naruto consoled, voice low and gentle. He wasn't known for his humanity, but he understood losing himself because of trauma and loss. Samahata's mindless thrashing reminded Naruto of his father, and of himself. Naruto's throat clogged with guilt and remembrance. You're okay, he whispered. Ever so gradually, Samahata stopped battering against the pressure, quivering in the water prison. Naruto stopped the turning of the great, red hurricane, letting the mighty storm fall and gathering his chakra back to himself. Encased in the water prison, Samahata didn't resist when Naruto brought him back to the boat. There, it opened its gaping maw and vomited the corpse of Kisame Hashigaki, the zero-tailed beast. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.